preferential trade bloc with allies for critical minerals, saying it undermines the international economic and trade order. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian expressed concern over the move, calling it a step away from an open and inclusive global trade environment. Lin stressed that a universally beneficial trade framework is in the common interest of all countries and that exclusionary rules should be avoided. This statement comes as the US looks to form a trade group with allies to secure mineral supply chains. Let's take a listen in.
维护开放、包容、普惠的国际贸易环境，符合各国的共同利益。各方都有责任为维护关键矿产的全球产供链稳定与安全发挥建设性作用。同时，我们反对任何国家以小圈子的规则破坏国际经贸秩序。
Collins, critical minerals are rapidly becoming as strategically important in the 21st century as oil was in the 20th. Are we entering an era where control over minerals becomes a central pillar of great power competition?
Yes, we have seen how for the past few decades now, Beijing has positioned itself as the natural leader and center and hub of the world in terms of the whole processes for mining, refining, processing of these critical minerals, of rare earths especially, and and this response is manifestation of how it is now growing increasingly anxious and wary of the reach and of course on the impact of the U.S. strategy to contain the continued dominance of China in these aspects. And we have seen how while China still dominates certain phases in terms of upstream mining capacities in certain countries, especially in Africa and Latin America, but its true dominance lies in the grip hold now in the face of refining and processing. And this is precisely where the US is trying to also pry this dominance away from China by aligning itself more with conventional allies, with Australia, with Japan, with the new deals in terms of critical minerals being inked recently with Australia and Japan, and also with other countries, including Malaysia and other ASEAN partners. So they are now, Washington is now investing heavily in these areas, and to, of course, this response also showcases the growing fear on the part of Beijing in terms of the future impact that this will have, coupled with other parallel efforts in place to have from tax sanctions to tariffs, and of course this is a multi-pronged front to contain the almost unchecked Chinese grip on these critical areas. And critical minerals will still remain a critical part of President Trump's approach when it comes to dealing with China, and there's no it is expected for China to react that way in terms of the overall containment capacity and the impact and the influence of this and the efficacy of these approaches being done by the Trump administration to consolidate and to synergize current allies in the Western world, and of course also at the same time to provide this new pressure for China that the era where there's this unchecked dominance on these sectors is now over under President Trump's watch.
And many US allies who will be at those negotiations today, they trade heavily with China while also seeking American security guarantees. Of course, Washington argues that China's dominance of this industry creates a national security risk. How realistic is it to expect US allies to choose sides on critical minerals without damaging their own economies?
Well, of course, they have been trapped between a rock and a hard place, and it's increasingly difficult for them to maneuver this complex navigation, in balancing the needs of these countries, because on one hand, they still rely deeply on China in terms of investment, in terms of market support and access, and also, for economic reasons. And but on the other hand, they are also almost, entirely dependent on the U.S. for its security umbrella and security support and defense deterrence, capacities. And as I've stated, they can't have the best of both worlds. They can't have the cake and eat it too. So we have seen how they are now increasingly being pushed further, and still, I don't see any movements or efforts to deviate from their conventional policies of maintaining this strategic hedging and recalibration, and of course not to and being careful and meticulous not to send a wrong message to either sides. And as in the case of ASEAN members, including Malaysia, that we still value the ties with both countries, and there's no need to have this kind of zero-sum mentality. And of course, the fallback option will always be on the need to pursue parallel models and to ensure that peace and stability are ensured through diplomatic and approaches of dialogue and consultations, but without the expense of having to compromise on the sovereignty and territorial integrity needs of those countries. But I foresee that this will not be sustainable in the long run, and they will still have to choose on the need to align deeper with the West in terms of getting the needed long-term returns in terms of security dependence. Of course, there's a paramount factor, but more importantly, on the need also for this transition away from China in terms of economic dependence. As I've stated, the U.S. economy is going to strengthen for the next couple of decades now, and China, with all these domestic internal constraints and demographic constraints and economic stagnation and decline, eventually these nations will realize that the sooner that they are more aligned with the Western systems and economic integration system, the better they will be, and the safer that they will be in also getting the needed security support from the West, especially from the US, and especially under the Trump administration. Thomas.
Collins Chong-Yu-Keat, as always, it's a great pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for taking the time and giving us your insight on these issues. We turn over